Mary Barra has just revealed that General Motors EV production next year will be a lot less than what they'd claimed publicly on a number of occasions over the past 6 months. They backflipped on that. And now she's made an interesting claim. Can you take her word for it? I don't know. I want to know what you guys think. Please let me know. I mean, I've been conned by her recently. I don't want to be conned again. What are your thoughts on this, Americans? Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. Great to see you. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Great to have you on board. Especially great for me because it does help the algorithm with the channel. And as you guys can see, we're now getting about 1.2 million views per week, which is really, really awesome. Thanks so much for your support. Let's get straight to it. Mary Barra. What is she up to now? Well, this is something that I had no idea on. Absolutely no idea. I mean, when Mary was asked about this about, 3 weeks ago, she didn't either. She said, we're still examining the data, the act. And to be fair on Mary here, I don't blame her for this because the truth is the IRA provisions, they're slightly complicated. So manufacturers, a lot of them haven't been able to really disclose whether or not you will get $7,500 off the price of your electric car in January when these new tax credits will actually come into place. Now, it's probably a little bit easier to work out whether Tesla vehicles will, simply because of the fact that they're the most American-made vehicles in America. In fact, they take up first, second, fourth, and fifth place in America's most American-made vehicle list, which came out a few months ago. I'll put a link in the description below to that list if you want to see it and figure out what I'm talking about. Realistically, unfortunately, Ford and GM's vehicles, they're not all that American-made. Obviously, they're planning on changing that, though, with their new electric cars. Big time. I mean, obviously, their electric car factories are in the US, aren't they? Hang on a minute. No, Ford's isn't. The Mustang Mach-E is made in Mexico. Anyway, Mary says that GM's electric vehicles will qualify for the full tax credit in 2 to 3 years. Now, that's a very arbitrary number, 2 to 3 years. Clearly, Mary isn't able to work out yet GM's production timeline when it's going to happen, if the parts they use in their EVs, which are made by Hyundai, Grobus, whether or not, and Bosch, whether or not those parts can be made in the US within the next 2 to 3 years. I'm guessing they're angling for that, aiming for that goal, because they want you guys to be able to qualify for the subsidies when you buy one of their cars. But they're not a whole lot confident on when that's going to happen, as evidenced by the 2 to 3 years number. Mary Barra actually spoke with analysts on Tuesday, and she said that GM's EV models will qualify for the full tax credit in 2 to 3 years. When she was quizzed on when exactly, she said 2 to 3 years. So what are the qualifications for the EV tax credit? Electric says the Inflation Reduction Act, passed in August, provides up to $7,500 US for new electric vehicle purchases. However, the EV must adhere to specific battery mineral sourcing and components assembly requirements to qualify, which is kind of tricky because no one seems to fully understand what those are. The bill's provisions are designed to bring manufacturers to the US, where a significant portion of the minerals and EV battery components must be extracted, processed, and manufactured domestically. To obtain the full credit, it will need to pass these two conditions. Critical minerals, 3,750. Starting next year, at least 40% of the value of critical minerals used in the EV's battery will need to be manufactured or assembled in the US, with its free trade partners or recycled here in North America. Each year after that, the requirement goes up by 10%. For example, in 2024, 50% will be required, 60% will be needed in 2025, 70% in 2026, and so on. So clearly, Tesla doesn't care about battery production in Germany anymore because they don't get all these incentives, right, for that production in Germany. So they've sent all their battery equipment that they had at Gigafactory Germany, they've sent it all from Germany back to the US, where they're going to focus on producing more 4680 cells so that your vehicle will qualify for that $3,750. What you might find happen is that Tesla will still offer the standard range with the CATL lithium iron phosphate pack or potentially a BYD lithium iron phosphate pack, which would temporarily be manufactured in China until Goshon High-Tech in the US get their battery factory ramped up and Tesla can get lithium iron phosphate batteries from them, which I believe is the contract they signed about a year ago. But anyway, the key point is that then, until that time, you just wouldn't get the $3,750 applied as a discount to your standard range Model Y or Model 3. That's what I can see happening because there's no way known Tesla can produce enough 4680 cells within the next 2 years for all the vehicles that they sell in America. That is not going to happen. However, the vehicles will qualify for other parts of the subsidy. Number 2, battery components. Also beginning next year, at least half of the value of the EV's battery components will need to be manufactured or assembled in North America. Likewise, the requirement will increase by 10% each year. You can see really the act was primarily about battery production, because they kind of thought, well, if we make it about that, then the company is obviously going to make the car here as well. Automakers like General Motors are making swift progress to ensure their electric vehicles qualify for the tax credit, as new climate initiatives expect to accelerate demand for EVs further. GM released its Q3 earnings on Tuesday. It reported a record $42 billion in revenue, and it also reported a pretty decent profit of more than $4.5 billion as well. Which means that ultimately it is in a much better position to dominate the electric vehicle market in North America compared to companies like Toyota, for example. And remember, of course, General Motors is definitely focused on EVs. I mean, what are they saying? They're saying they're going to be EV only in the US by 2035, which is a good goal. Now, hopefully they can accelerate that and get to 2030. But realistically, unfortunately, GM has already admitted it's not going to meet its EV goals next year, which is just going to give more sales and more market share to Tesla. So do GM's electric vehicles qualify for the credit? Here's what GM said. Yes, we think out of the gate, we're going to be eligible for the 3,750 and will ramp to have full qualification in the next 2 to 3 years, getting up to the 7,500. So there you go. Good news. The Bolt EUV and the Bolt EV should, according to General Motors, you can hold them to it, qualify for the $3,750, which would make it a crazy bargain. If they keep selling them at $25,000, you're getting it for about $22,000. It's a no-brainer. Buy that over some other cheap runabout, because it's going to hold its value a lot better than a gasoline-powered vehicle will. Barra said this: we're well positioned there. Adding its commercial fleet, BrightDrop will also be important in terms of getting federal incentives. In addition to that, GM said its domestic battery cell and module production in the US will give it a significant opportunity to leverage the EV tax credit of up to $45 per kilowatt hour. That's quite a lot of money if you've got a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, right? Got a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, $35 per kilowatt hour. That's $3,500 just for that battery production. That's in addition to these EV incentives, meaning the vehicle could potentially qualify for $11,000 in EV incentives with a big battery pack. But remember, I mean, what's the size of the battery pack in, say, the Hummer EV? Well, that thing's gargantuan. Apparently it's a 200 kilowatt hour pack. Yeah, it's kind of, I'm not sure I like it being that way. I think it should incentivize fuel economy and efficiency as well. Anyhow, that's just my 2 cents. So, General Motors, what are they doing? Well, remember, 75% of GM's total market now is in North America. That includes Canada, Mexico, and the US, of course, but 75%. You can see why this matters enormously to General Motors and why they will benefit more than any other company in the US. Well, maybe not in 2023. I think Tesla will benefit more in 2023, but I'm talking in the long term. So General Motors are building 4 battery plants. Well, they're not building them specifically. They're building them with their joint partner, LG Chem, which obviously is a South Korean company. They're the second biggest battery company in the world. They're building those battery plants, and those battery plants should have around about 160 gigawatt hours of battery production by 2027. That's enough for, well, millions of electric cars. And also, GM says they plan on delivering 1 million EVs in North America. Hang on a minute. No. They've changed that now. Well, I think we all knew this would happen. 1 million EVs in North America and China in 2025. Now, will those vehicles include the Wuling Hongwan Mini EV, the little tiny quadricycle for $5,000? I'm going to guess it will. That makes the target a lot more achievable and a lot more realistic. Now, obviously, these strict battery requirements will mean a lot of EVs won't qualify for EV incentives next year. You're really going to have to do your research on this. I suggest waiting. Obviously, if you're buying a Tesla, it could be good to actually make the transaction happen in January, but you probably would have to anyway at this point in time. Most of them have more than a 2-month wait anyway. So yeah, now's a good time to buy a Tesla vehicle. But in terms of the other manufacturers, I'm not sure which of them will and won't qualify. In fact, a lot of them are not sure either. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. So that could mean it's worth waiting to actually find out from those manufacturers if they do or they don't qualify. The other thing to consider is the fact that by the time Chevy is mass manufacturing the Equinox EV, which they say will cost $30,000 US, if it does come out at that price, and by then General Motors qualifies for the $7,500 US plus the battery tax credit as well, that could be a huge difference. You're talking about a mid-size electric SUV for $22,500 US. If they pull that off, that would be enormous. Enormous for consumers. I don't know if GM will make much money on those, but enormous for consumers. And in my view, that's a good thing. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day. Bye-bye.